Hey, this is Joseph Lebrecq, and I have with me today Lisa Gottfried. So, welcome, Lisa, to my little experiment here.
Thank you, Joseph. It's good to be
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. So, maybe, to start out, usually I ask the person who I'm kind of hanging out with, just kind of give a brief overview of, who they are and some of the things that they're about and, just interesting tidbits, what you do, what you're
Yeah,
about, right?
yeah,
So,
yeah. So let's see. I'm in my sixth year. I just finished. Yay! Yesterday was my last day of school.
hmm,
Um, my sixth year of teaching high school digital design, um, and I teach everything from Illustrator, After Effects, Photoshop, Premiere, Character Animate. I do a little of everything. A lot, not everything. There's a lot that Adobe offers. Um, and I have anywhere from ninth graders are required to take my class. So that's a really nice intro. And then when kids want to continue on, they take my upper level classes in game design, visual effects, and digital design lab. And we do some really, really cool projects in my digital design lab. Um, this last year, we participated in the Napa Valley Lighted Art Festival. So we had a building that we got to project our artwork on. It was a 70-foot building.
oh, cool.
It was really, really cool. And let's see, beyond that, I'm an adjunct professor for Thoreau University. I teach other teachers about innovative education. So I do that on the side. And I come from the art world. I got my degree in ceramic sculpture
Hmm.
a long, long time ago. And I actually got into education through homeschooling my kids for several years because they just needed it. And now they're off successful, off in college and graduated, and one kid about to enter high school.
Oh, cool.
So yeah.
So I think out of all these conversations that I've had so far, you're the first person who has anything to do with K-12,
Oh,
which is
cool.
interesting. Everybody else was
Yeah.
like
Like
college
volleyball.
professor,
Right,
just higher education type stuff.
right,
So
right.
you're kind of a mix because you've
Yeah.
got the adjunct faculty stuff and the K-12 stuff.
And the adjunct faculty stuff, I actually teach teachers in all grade levels. So I've had kindergarten teachers that I've taught up through high school. So I have sort of my eyes on what teachers want to do technologically with their students at all ages, which is
Hmm.
kind of cool.
Yeah, neat.
Yeah.
And you're also involved in the Adobe Education Leaders program, right?
Yeah. So I joined last year. I was invited to join after I did an externship at Adobe for
Hmm.
a week, and I was actually embedded on a team, a development team, which was really fun for about a week. And they invited me back for another week in the summertime. We had such a good time together, and that's when I was invited to be a part of the Adobe Education Leader group. And I'm also, as long as we're humble bragging, I also am one of the top 100 global educators, innovative educators in the world. Which
Nice.
is, I don't even know. That's a whole story in and of itself. But for an organization called 100.org that's based out of Helsinki,
Hmm.
Finland.
That's pretty cool. So
Yeah.
can you talk about the team you were embedded in with Adobe? Is there anything you can?
Well,
Are you like bound
right,
by
right,
NDA and so forth?
non-disclosure. um, well, okay, so I can tell you that I was there as an educator, right, to give the development team, I can't talk about the product that we were working on, but um, to give them perspective on who they were actually creating product for, and to give them some case studies and do a little research for them and do some example work of how I might use the product if I
Mm-hmm.
were in high school, and give them feedback on the product. And one of my high school kids got to be on that team at the same time, which is really unusual.
Hmm.
Adobe usually doesn't let high school kids intern,
Yeah.
um, but that they made an exception for an exceptional kid. So it was awesome for many reasons. One, it was great to see like how project management is used in developing a product so that I could bring that back to the classroom. And I use basically agile project management in the classroom anyway. So to see how Adobe uses it and to ask lots of questions about how they use it really helped me to go back to my kids and be like, yeah, this is actually what gets used in industry, and it's good that you're learning this skill.
Yeah, that's funny. I see that more and more with different classes where, the instructors will definitely try and incorporate like a lot of the tools and sort of the workflows that, are used out in industry into the classroom. And that's a really neat change. It
If
wasn't
you're
like that when I went to school.
right, so the high school that I teach at is New Technology High School. So we were one of the first project-based learning schools in the country. Like, how many years ago is that? Like 20 some years ago. And so when you do projects, you should know how to manage them, right? So a couple of years ago, I started to do some research, like how do adults out in the real world actually manage big projects? And that's how we kind of came upon it. And we do the Lighted Art Festival that we did. That was like a 3 to 4 month long project that we worked on. That was a semester long project that we worked on.
Mm-hmm.
So we needed something like that to manage something that huge.
And what kind of stuff did you like that particular project? Did you use any specific software that you want to talk about for that, or?
We used a variety of things. So we had 4 teams that were working together to make some kind of visual product. And then as a classroom of about 22 kids, how are we going to stitch together the 4 teams and their creative vision? So we worked mostly in After Effects,
Mm-hmm.
a little bit of Illustrator. It was a lot of motion graphic type work, mostly illustrative work rather than Photoshop, because of what you're trying to do on a large building. You have some parameters and things that you want to think of, like what works really well on a building versus what doesn't work really well on a building.
Yeah.
And like high contrast things. We did use the lightsaber plugin a lot. We wanted like a glowy, neon look for a lot of it, but not all of it was done that way.
Mm. And I bet the hardware to get did you say it was like a 70-foot projection?
Yeah.
So that must have been pretty high powered stuff.
Yeah, I don't know I can't remember how many lumens, but it's crazy expensive equipment to rent. So actually Adobe helped and sponsored us, a portion of that. And then the community actually pitched in. It's not a small budget to rent the projectors and the containers that hold the projectors and somebody who staffs it for the full week of the festival.
Yeah, that's neat. Was any of that like recorded, or are there artifacts that came from that you can view online or anything? If people are interested.
I'm still working on getting those artifacts. I know there's stuff. If you look up the Napa Lighted Art Festival, we're definitely in their overview video. We're still working on that because we've won some awards and now have to go speak about what we did.
Mm-hmm.
And the kids are traveling with me to Florida at the end of this in July to go talk about their project to the New Tech Network, which is a huge network of schools that are based off of our school. So
it's going to be really humid in Florida in July.
We're hoping. They said something about maybe projecting that stuff on the building there during the conference, but I was like, you do understand that's really expensive to do, so I don't know. We'll see if that actually happens in the humidity or not.
So we've got a question that's come in for you.
Cool.
From Jay. And Jay asks, what aspects of project management are kids better at than adults?
Ooh, that's a really good question. Well, they certainly don't come in with any sort of ego to the project. and they're much more willing to co-lead. In fact, it can be a challenge to assign roles and leadership roles. Sometimes they will share leadership roles, or one person will give it up and another one will take it on. So I think they're much more fluid there in terms of egos. They don't have that adult, like, I must be the one in charge, or or I'm trying to advance my career. They just want really good end product. So yeah, that would definitely be the place that they really excel.
A little less of this kind of problem.
Yeah. They just want really good stuff in the end. They want it to look really good. As long as they've got like high risk, high, what's the word? It's like, that there's a big audience for what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
You do these big shows. And so they really feel it, and they feel the bar goes up for them in terms of like how the final product looks. Yeah. But their career, they're not trying to advance a career. They're just trying to be good students.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. So, let's see. You had a couple other things that you wanted to talk about. Do you want to mention one of those now?
Well, we were talking about, so when you do really cool things in the classroom, that's all great and good, but my question is always, how do we scale that to other teachers? How do we start sharing more about what we do with people who are trying to do the same things in their classrooms? And one of the things that I teach in my graduate classes about like research action, like solving a problem and then really using real observable, measurable results to see if what you applied to the problem really did work. And then the piece that teachers never do next is they don't publish their findings. And I think that's the piece that is really my passion, is trying to teach other teachers how to show each other what they're doing through video and through blogging and through other transliteracy media, so that when you happen upon someone who's like, hey, I'm really interested in this XYZ thing, you could say, oh, we did that last year. Go take a look at our blog. Like, you were just asking for artifacts. That's where we're falling down. But, I've been pretty good with other projects with just documenting really well, so that I could say, yeah, just go to my website, go check it out. In fact, you could go to my website. There is stuff about the Lighted Art Festival on my blog if people want to look at it. It's very simple. It's Lisa, Lisa, Gottfried, GOTTFRIED.weebly.com. And there's all sorts of stuff there about project management and about the Lighted Art Festival and about all sorts of things that we do in class to solve problems that come up typically for students and teachers.
And I obviously spelled that wrong. I'm trying to get it up to share in the chat, but I will figure that out.
I wonder if I can.
Through here.
Can I type it in the chat here? Let's see. Weebly.com. You see that?
Oh, there we go.
Okay.
Yeah, it shows up right there. So I will. Oh,
cool.
Gosh.
So, the interesting thing about being an Adobe education leader is that I almost feel like I'm so outclassed by these people who are incredible, technically knowledgeable folks. And then there's me who I know just enough to get into trouble, but I know how to empower students to go find what they need, or to bring in resources in terms of people or mentors for them. So I think I'm stronger in the education side, but I'm also like learning all about Adobe as I go with the kids.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because there's all sorts of different people in that program. Like there's the K-12 and the higher education mix. of people, but then there's also like some people that don't teach at all.
Mm.
So, in my former position, I was, I was adjunct faculty on the side, but that wasn't my primary role at the university. My primary role was not a systems engineer, a software engineer.
Ah.
So, and that came from a design background. I started out as a multimedia designer, and that then evolved into, I picked up more and more programming and things like that over the years. But it was always interesting because people were always like, when I'd meet new AELs, they're always like, "Oh, what do you teach?" And I'm like, "Well, I teach, but that's not like I didn't get invited into the program because of my teaching. I got invited into the program because of this other stuff that I did."
Well, the interesting thing is I didn't come from the teaching world, so I owned a video business. And was hired to do the job that I'm doing now out of industry. So for me, the last 6 years have been like a huge learning curve, getting my master's in education and then being recruited to teach other people. So it's been really, it's been quite an amazing trip. Yeah, and I paid people to do a lot of things that I'm now teaching kids to do. So I paid a motion graphics person. I paid, people to do voiceovers, and I did a lot of the editing myself for video and the directing, but I paid people to go film and light and do all the things that need to be done for sound. So, it's been a steep learning curve for me as well to learn that stuff.
Well, that's kind of a neat part of being, in an adjunct faculty role, whereas most adjuncts that I know, they work in the industries that they teach about.
Right.
Right. So whereas if you've got like a tenured professor who's, and it varies. I mean, some of them probably keep up with whatever they're doing, I'm sure, but I think we've all known some who just sort of like, they teach from the same syllabus year after year. They never update things. And
I think that's part of the reason I really love working at New Tech is that you never do the same project twice. And if you do, it always looks different.
Yeah.
And it's applied knowledge. So we always expect that even if you're doing math or physics or whatever, that there's a real authentic final product to it. And that changes based on the news or, the class and what they're interested in every time you do the project. So you can't be canned at New Tech. You have to be willing to like work with community partners and sometimes not know where you're just knowing that you have certain content standards that you want to cover, but you're not sure how it's all going to come together, and yet it does magically. So,
Yeah. And that's a lot like, taking on just projects on the side too. I mean, I do a bunch of stuff
where you just say yes,
just on contract. Yeah, well, I mean that's a problem, right? But you look at all the stuff. Like I've got a list of stuff that I've got to do over the next couple months right now, and you look at it and it's like, oh my gosh, like look at all this stuff. Like how am I possibly going to get all this done? But then if you've been doing it for a while, like, oh yeah, this isn't going to be a problem because it always works out.
I think the Light at Art Festival kind of had that feel to it. There was a bit of terror around it. I mean, like if it looks terrible and my kids do a terrible job, it's 70 feet tall, or 70 feet wide. There's no hiding from that.
Yeah.
And then we've never done anything like that before. But I had a mentor that met with the kids every couple of weeks, and I didn't even know where to set benchmarks so the students did all the work. I basically said, look, I'll be your guide on the side and I'll make sure that I'll be the project manager on this thing. But really, you guys need to tell me what it is you need to get from here to there. And then we'll figure it out together. So I think like that's why I like the agile project management so so much because you can only plan like a couple weeks at a time, or
Mm-hmm.
even if you don't know where you're particularly going, you can at least keep moving in the right direction.
Yeah. And I find working on stuff too, you get like these like little spurts, where
Right.
it's like you're not even like expecting, or like there's something like way off in the distance. It's a few months from now, but you're just like in the mindset where it's like, I could work on this right now. I feel like working on this right now. And you just like plug out a bunch of stuff, and then it's okay if it like sits there for a little bit to revisit later on.
But
Right?
see, for teenagers, their tendency is to say, well, it's a couple months out. I'll just hang out with my friends during class today. So
Hmm.
that's the big challenge in high school is like, how do you keep momentum going? And the students said it was because they had to meet every couple of weeks with a serious mentor who worked in industry, and they
Hmm.
could not look terrible when they met with that person.
Right. Right.
So it kept them, like, hey, we're meeting again with Ross on Monday. You better look professional. Like, what do you need to do to get that done? And it was good. It propelled them forward to have those like check-ins on a regular basis.
Yeah, that must be difficult because people who, are used to working on projects and used to that sort of workflow, they can kind of pace themselves and know when to jump ahead, when they need to like crush stuff, when they can like just let it lay for a little bit. Um,
But imagine if you
but
only
yeah,
had,
if they haven't done that, if there's like students that
well,
haven't really dealt with that yet.
they can't work all day long on something. They have other classes. So
Yeah.
really, like, imagine you have to get a project done and you only have an hour and a half twice a week. Then how do you spend your time for that hour and a half?
Yeah.
So it has to be like, they have to really be on. We went nonstop. Like, we'd start the class, like, okay, go, and then just not stop until 3:00. And they'd be like, God, we need more time.
Mm.
So they would have preferred working on it all day long for several weeks and just said, see you to the rest of their classes. But that's not how high school works, or at least not how we're set up as a high school to work.
Yeah. Very different.
It is.
Hmm. Well, let's see.
What else are you interested in? What else can we tell people that would be useful?
I don't know. Are there any, like, oftentimes in these things, like conferences come up, right? People like to talk about different conferences they're going to, what they find interesting, um, things like that. I don't have anything that I have planned right now, so I can't contribute very much to that. But, if you
Well,
had something like that going on, or
so
you mentioned the July thing.
yeah, I mean, I just finished school. We won an award called Best in Network. There's like a series of about 200 schools that are modeled after our high school in a group called the New Tech Network. And it's all project-based learning schools, which is really kind of cool. It really is reimagining how we do school in a way that I think makes more sense and is much more effective. And one of the things I want to talk about, actually, my kids just finished certification testing. And I was pretty terrified. There were about 10 kids that wanted to, for the first time ever, we piloted that in our district. And I was terrified that nobody would pass, because project-based learning is not really like, okay, we're going to learn Photoshop from beginning to end. It's like, okay, we're going to use Photoshop for some cool end product that we want to do. So I always wondered as a teacher, like, is that serving them well enough? Should I be doing more like, let's walk through each one of the tools in Photoshop, or let's make sure that it's an exhaustive pathway? And instead, what I've been doing is more like the upper level kids, sometimes they choose their own projects. They choose what's interesting to them and then just go for it and go deep with it on their own. And I've always wondered, like, is that effective? Like, are they going to be ready for testing for certification? And 100% of my kids pass in whatever they tested in.
And these are the ACAs?
This is ACA is Adobe cert. Yep.
Yeah, Adobe certified.
Yeah. Yeah.
Associate.
So they now have, depending on what they were interested in, right? So some of them did Illustrator, some did Photoshop, some did Premiere. And as guide on the side, I always wonder, like, am I serving them if they want to go out in the world and do this for a living? And the truth is, the answer is clear. They all passed whatever they wanted to pass.
That's cool, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and super proud of them. It says something about project-based learning as a really effective way of learning.
Yeah. And those exams don't just cover, facts about the products either. They go into some kind of like like industry specific kind of stuff, like dealing with clients and dealing with copyright and just like theory around color and design and layout and all that stuff. So
and I didn't some of that stuff I didn't explicitly teach. I just gave them resources, or we've talked about it tangentially, or maybe they learned a little bit of those design principles in 9th grade. And, they passed the test. They're ready to go out in the world and actually do the work in the program that they were interested in, which is, that's awesome.
So they could pick whichever particular test they wanted to take, whichever product.
Yeah. Now I have kids who are coming back next year who want to do like the triumvirate, the Illustrator, Photoshop, and InDesign, I think.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, well, you're going to have to maybe figure out how you're going to learn InDesign, because I don't know it at all. So let's come up with a plan for what you need to do.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, to me, that's my favorite way of teaching, is just like, okay, yes, let's do it. Let's go for it. Like, what needs to happen? And then I'll just help you. Yes.
Yeah, InDesign's neat. I mean, it's different, of course, right?
Yeah, because
it just sort of like eats Photoshop and Illustrator. Is how I think of it. It's like I'm just gonna grab this and that and put those here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it reminds me of like that's how Edge Animate was. I don't know if you ever messed with that before they discontinued it.
No.
But it didn't really have any drawing tools in it except for like, you could define like rectangular, because it basically is drawing out divs in HTML, right? So divs are all rectangles. It's like HTML, you're just dealing with rectangles basically at a fundamental level, and you're going to have to rely on something else if you're going to actually create something Photoshoppy or Illustratory or whatever. So you'd have to always like bring them in from other applications.
App smashing is what they call that in lower, right?
I always thought InDesign was kind of like similar in that way.
And the interesting thing is that I don't know, the kids that I work with seem to be doing like college level work, but then again, I don't know really what happens at the college level. But I do know that the artists and the people that they work with are always very impressed with their skills, their technical skills.
That's cool. So this was the first year you did it, and
yeah, they all passed.
Is it going to be a yearly thing or a semester-based thing, or?
I don't know, because if some of them want to take 2 tests next year, I think I have to negotiate with my boss about whether or not we can cover the cost of that. But at least once a year, I would like to do that. Yeah, now they're all hot on it. They're like, oh, I got my Photoshop. Now I want to do these 3 things. I'm like, okay, all right. You'll be set when you're ready for college and when you're ready beyond that.
Yeah. I mean, if there's like one that they know really well,
Right.
then I can see like them taking on that and like one more at a time,
Right.
perhaps. But yeah, I mean, it is a lot to do like 3 at once or something.
Yeah, no, we wouldn't be doing that for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
but it was good. It raised the stakes for them at the end of the year, when it's really easy to let up at the end of the year. We don't do finals. So
Hmm.
there's a final project that you do or something along those lines. So they sort of lack a lot of excitement around the end of the year. They're winding down, they're letting go. So it was really good, especially for my seniors, to like stick in there, even though they know what college they're going to and all that stuff too. They were excited to test for certification. I've never been a huge proponent for certification testing. Like, I'm just like, what's the value in it? Like,
Hmm.
but now I'm kind of seeing it for that age group and also for college age kids who haven't been in industry yet. It's really useful to have it.
Yeah, I think it gives them a bit of confidence too.
Yeah.
Like they're like proving to themselves like, oh
Yeah,
yeah, like I can,
totally.
I can pass this certification.
Right.
It's a
Right.
good self-esteem booster and
Yeah.
validator of what they've learned and so forth. Even if like, they go for a job and
They want to see your portfolio. They
yeah,
want to see your work, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
But it is something that they can have for themselves at least, the very least.
Yes.
Yeah. Hmm. So you said that your last day of class was like a few days ago?
A few days ago, yeah.
Yeah,
Last half day yesterday and last 2 days ago was the last day of school.
yeah, I'm doing 2 classes right now, and today's the last day of our, I guess
What
it's spring
what are you
quarter.
what are you teaching?
Let's see. I'm teaching there's a class on creative problem solving and programming fundamentals, which is kind of cool. We go from like, you know, it's split into like 3 different kind of like modules where you've got the first section is just like straight up just how to identify problems correctly, how to come up with different solutions to those identified problems, and then how to implement those solutions, right?
Do you use like the design thinking model or any
No,
particular
there's a couple
protocol?
different things that they go through. The textbook for this, and I cannot recall what the name of the textbook is. It's lengthy, but it goes through a couple different models on how to go through and figure out all these different aspects. But then it jumps off to sort of like the middle portion, which is more, we start looking at UML, so modeling languages, and looking at pseudocode. So it's sort of like bridging the gap between like just general problem solving and solving problems in a coding environment, right? And then we jump into a couple of examples of, some introductory, how to program stuff using JavaScript first of all, and then Python.
Nice.
Yeah. So we got that one. And then there's one that I've taught for a number of years, which is it's a course on, uses Adobe Air to create mobile applications. So that's always a fun one. We look at both the Flex model, so Apache Flex, and then we go into, straight up ActionScript with Starling and Feathers UI. And we use Air for both of them.
So now you're well beyond what
Mm-hmm.
I can understand. You're well beyond my own understanding.
Well, yeah, but those are the 2 I'm doing now. I'm doing the problem solving one again. This is actually the first time we've taught the problem solving course. It's one I designed sort of at the end of last year. And
How do you think it went?
it went pretty well. Yeah. There's a couple of tweaks here and there, as there always are, but it went really well, and we're doing it again this summer.
Is the students who attend, are they predominantly computer science kids or are they design kids?
Oh, it's a whole mix. I've got some people who, they've written in other programming languages before. Most of them, I get the sense that most of them may have like dabbled in like HTML, CSS before, but they haven't really done any like logical programming, you know? So yeah, it's a neat mix of people.
What's your thought on trying to work with my computer science guy at school? They're developing apps and doing really cool things, but I was suggesting to him like, hey, we should collaborate together. Maybe we could help with the design side of things
Right.
for your apps. Would you take a look at Adobe XD? And he didn't want to have anything to do with it. He was like, well, you can't export the thing or whatever it is that he needed to do to get it in a usable format.
Yeah. So that's something that, I like XD, but that's something that I've been asking about since like, I saw it as like Project Sparkle or whatever it was called back in some little closet at Adobe headquarters,
Yeah.
Is like, well, that's cool.
But how do you communicate with your coders?
Yeah, and I know you can export certain things now, like design documents from it and color sets and assets. But what I was looking for when I first saw it was like, my head's immediately like, oh, you can take that, design it all visually.
Right.
And then it'd be great if you could like export that.
Yes.
As just like a sort of templated thing for people to start like wiring functionality into.
Yeah.
And you just,
it's not built.
Which, I guess there's so many different, frameworks and platforms and everything. It would be each particular owner or somebody who's invested in a certain platform would really need to go through and like, create a sort of like extension or something themselves in order to do that, I would think. So I do understand why it doesn't do that at its core.
Yeah.
But I always saw it as like, if this thing could actually like push out like a template that somebody could just grab and just start like programming with.
Right.
Like that would be like crazy.
Right.
But it doesn't do that. So, but for what it's for,
not yet.
It does do an excellent job.
It does. It's a really good program.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, but that's I can identify with that instructor's reluctance.
Yeah, it makes
based
sense
on that.
what you're talking about. Yeah. And then, for me as a design teacher, I have to think like, okay, is it still worthwhile to pitch to they'd have to he wasn't even interested in looking at the templates or at the prototypes once they were made, because he said that's not useful. Well, he doesn't have a design background, so he doesn't really see a lot of value in the design piece yet. We have a new relationship, so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, and in my case, I'm looking to move more into the design aspect of things. I'm pretty much like 99% burnt out from any sort of like programming or engineering right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sort of swinging back around.
What do you want to do?
There's a lot I could do. I've been doing a lot of, more and more teaching, right?
Mm-hmm.
Through, I've got the Adjunct stuff. I've got all the stuff I do with lynda.com, LinkedIn Learning, and, different things through Peach Pit, like books and everything. So, that area is ripe for me. So, yeah.
So when you do, when you teach something like on LinkedIn Learning,
right,
is it something that you have to go and learn yourself first before you go and teach it, or do you have this really deep breadth of technical knowledge already?
It depends, because like everything needs to be planned, of course, no
Right.
matter what it is. If I know it by heart, or if it's something that I need to research a little first, it has to be planned either way. So there's
Right.
always like a big couple months of planning that goes into stuff like that. But in terms of, I mean, most of the stuff I do is around Adobe Animate for LinkedIn Learning, though I do have like other courses on like Angular and just basic like HTML and JavaScript type stuff. But
So while I have you then as the Animate guy,
mhm.
that is one application that we haven't delved into yet, and I'm thinking about for my game design class.
Oh yeah.
It's game design / special effects or visual effects. So it's really open in terms of like what we can do in that class. I've been experimenting with Character Animator as a means for them to develop characters for their game design documents. But I love motion graphics and haven't. I mean, I've been doing stuff in After Effects, but
Yep.
What's the value of? I mean, I keep looking at Animate and going, should I? Is that the next thing I need to learn? Is that the next thing we need to explore? Where is that mostly used, and how is it different than After Effects?
Yeah. I mean, with After Effects, let's see. So with After Effects, there aren't a ton of like asset creation tools in there, similar to what we were talking about with like InDesign and Edge Animate and everything. So you're usually pulling stuff in from Illustrator, right? Or whatever. And then you're animating that stuff. With Animate, it does have like this fully mature, robust drawing system in there. They've got a whole bunch of different brush types and everything. So it's a bit more like Photoshop for animation, right?
And is it like frame by frame kind of animation?
It can be.
Okay.
It is frame based.
Yeah.
And it's got the concept of keyframes like After Effects does, but it handles them a bit differently. One place that Animate is used a ton is in, television industry for, different things on like, if you think of networks like, what am I thinking of? Like a lot of Adult Swim stuff, My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic, a bunch of like Nickelodeon type cartoons and things of that nature.
Okay.
A lot of that stuff is all done using Animate for the basic drawings. But what's interesting is that they usually do the animation for a lot of the character stuff in there inside of Animate, and then just pull it over into something like After Effects to, do the compositing with, painted backgrounds and so forth, or to
That's interesting.
Add other compositing effects. So it does have a relationship with After Effects.
Can you like link it, like dynamic link?
It doesn't have dynamic link. Yeah. And they're working more and more on getting the two to like play together nicer. So something like that could happen. Like the last couple of releases, they've improved like what comes over into After Effects when you drag like an FLA document into After Effects. Like with the latest release, it'll actually like it'll preserve any of the advanced layers stuff, which is new to Animate. So things like camera movement and because Flash and Animate, they never used to have a concept of a camera, right? Because in After Effects you've got a camera and you can make things 3D and everything. Right. So a few years ago they did introduce like an actual camera inside of Animate, which you think like why didn't they do that like 20 years ago? But it's in there now, but it gets preserved now. So before you'd bring over your content into After Effects and you'd lose all that stuff if you had done it in there. So now it preserves all that. So they're slowly like getting closer and closer to a better.
And what do you think about the Character Animate?
Character Animator is neat. I used to have a more negative opinion of it. because it was sort of like, well, what's the point of this, you know? Like I couldn't see like the application of it, and
Right.
it bothered me that like, oh look, we have a third application with the term animate in there
Yes.
or for animation. Like we
Yes.
got animate, we've got edge animate, we've got character animator, not to
Right.
mention After Effects, right? But the work they've done on that and the improvements they've done over the past, especially the past year or so, have really turned my opinion around about
I
it.
I
I
have
think it's really
this
nice
idea.
now.
I have this idea that we'll somehow use that in the Lighted Art Festival and have like some kind of live character
Mm-hmm.
on the building that interacts with the people in the audience somehow.
Yeah,
Could be kind of cool.
yeah,
Giant character.
yeah. What's nice, I mean, if you look at like, because it seems like all these different animation programs inside of Adobe that they're all sort of doing their own thing, right?
Well, I like it for high schoolers who can get some immediate positive results just by using their templates.
Yep.
That's pretty cool. And kids who I didn't even show them what that program does were doing some really interesting presentations with some of the characters that they found. You know, they just needed some kind of on camera talent, and they didn't want to be it.
Sure.
It works. It works for like we do a lot of oral presentations in our high school. It's a big part of one of the learning outcomes that we work on is oral presentation skills. And I have a lot of kids who are like either on the spectrum or like incredibly shy or anxious, or who deal with anxiety, who do not present at all. They'd rather take the 0, which always made me kind of sad.
Hmm.
So this year we tried character animator, and every single one of those kids presented just fine. Like no anxiety. They all came to school that day. They all did their presentation because no one was looking at them. They were looking at the screen.
Right. Yep.
So in that way, it's kind of brilliant. It answers a need for kids who have special needs or have issues around public speaking,
Hmm.
which is kind of cool.
Yeah, like I said, my opinion of it has definitely changed. And I'm actually one of the instructors for a course that's going on the Education Exchange right now for character animator as
I'm
well.
actually enrolled in that.
Are you? Like,
Yes,
it's
I
the
am.
character design
Yeah.
for
Oh,
educators
not
course.
character design. Well, it's a character animator. I think your name's on the list there.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Yeah, so that's been fun. It's nice to use it now that it's more robust, you know? And talking with the different teams, like the animate team and the character animator team, they do seem to have more and more like an awareness that it'd be great if they could all kind of like work together and everything.
Yeah.
And actually, I mean there is some stuff
not,
that's come out of that, right? So
like
there is more
great divide between Photoshop and Illustrator, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
What tools you're gonna include.
Yeah, something I've noticed over the past, I'm not sure when they added this, but like if you go to like the animate page, let's say, or the character animator page, or the After Effects page on Adobe.com, if you scroll all the way down, there'll be like this little section about like, hey, here are the 3 animation tools that we have. These are our 3 primary animation tools.
Nice.
And there's like a link that goes off and talks about like all 3 together kind of thing.
Nice.
And I think that's a really good direction for them to be going with that.
Definitely.
Yeah. Cool. Well, it's just about top of the hour here.
Wow. Did we really talk for a whole hour?
Yeah. So if there's anything else that you want to leave with,
let's see.
And if not, then that's fine too.
We're always looking for community partners. We're always looking for people that we can serve in doing our projects. So if there's anybody out there who wants to work with a bunch of high schoolers to solve some kind of problem for your organization, or you might be able to mentor some kids, we're always looking for that, and open to any and all partnerships. So I'll put that out there. And then come, if you are in California, come see the Napa Valley Lighted Art Festival in January of next year, or the year after. Let's see, it would be 2020. It's a great project and it's really fun. There's like 18 different buildings that have projections, and we're actually hoping to partner with other countries. We have a place in Poole, England that's interested in working with us. So if anybody wants in on that kind of action and just maybe having their students or their group participate in an international lighted art festival, we're noodling that around this year about like how can we broaden this and have students collaborate across the world and have a show that sort of travels from light show to light show. So I'm just going to put that out there. If anybody's interested in that or wants to contact me, they certainly can. See, and you can contact me through the website. That's probably the best way to do it.
Yep, and I've put the website in the chat as well.
Awesome.
So people should have access to that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for stopping by and chatting.
Yeah, it's been great to get to know you a little bit. I've seen you and not really connected with you all that much at AEL, at Adobe Education Leader events. So it'll be nice. Are you going to the summit in July?
Yes.
Yes, good.
Yep.
So we'll connect there for sure.
Yeah, that's like the one thing I have on my schedule. So, yeah.
Awesome. We'll talk more.
Right.
Thank you so much, Joseph.
All right. I'm going to stop the stream. And there we go.